WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
For any of you who've listened to our podcast in the past, you know that AI is a very important part of my business world and a little bit even in the personal side. But artificial intelligence is something that I believe is truly going to be in every aspect of our businesses today. One, without a doubt, that has grown in popularity and interest is marketing, but it's not something that you can just launch into. And you shouldn't go into doing AI to just write a bunch of stuff for you and hope for the best. And I'm not going to pay a marketing professional to do that anymore. Today's environment is completely different and it requires a little bit of navigation. And there's some effective ways of being able to use the artificial intelligence in your marketing campaigns and efforts. Today, we are truly fortunate to have Jennifer Renshaw, who is the founder and CEO of Brandmark Digital, on today's podcast. I talked with Jennifer today and we learn a little bit about what is new with artificial intelligence in marketing, some of the best practices, some use cases, and I think you'll walk away learning something really interesting from here. Now, Dennis had a little bit of emergency. He couldn't make today's recording, so he's really sad about not being here and apologizes, but we will definitely have him on the very next podcast. So take a listen. This is a really interesting podcast. You know, I think when it comes to marketing, it is one of those mysterious aspects about business that for me, it's confusing. You know, I'm a sales guy at heart, and I really know what marketing, what sales is, but marketing is something, to me, it's an art form. It's a science. And one of the things, Jen, that I've learned about some of these, basically very sensitive things. You know, I want to promote my business. I want to be able to make my brand look good. Is that you really need to have a really talented person being able to do this. And one of the things that I also know about is a little bit about AI. And AI, there's none of that stuff there. There's not a human being who's like going to design my stuff for me, or he's going to, it's going to do this for me. I'm a little bit nervous about this idea of AI taking over. I mean, in general, marketing is something that I need a human for, right?
Yes, I definitely think so. I mean, obviously that's a little self-serving, but I do. I mean, we are big proponents of using AI, of course, but also of having that human touch to really make the difference as well. So I think one thing we've noticed happening just with ChatGPT, as well as Gemini and Claude and all of the others, all those other tools that people are using specifically around content generation, is that a lot of the content is starting to sound similar. Oh. And so the best way to differentiate yourself now is to have that human component that comes in and has almost a commentary on whatever the topic is and can offer the human insight to where, yeah, AI is great at generating a summary or of, putting together, here's a paragraph about how you should do something or what you should do. But the human experience hasn't been brought into that. And so as people are reading through the content and, using that as their writing form, one thing that we highly, highly recommend is inserting those humanisms, as we call them. And so throw in an example of how you did it, or how your company has done something, or how one of your clients used something. And just use those true life examples will go so much further and differentiate you from the rest of the crowd.
So there's no argument in the case that AI has impacted, certainly the world in a lot of different areas, but certainly AI is going to be, it's going to be an integral part of marketing in today and going forward, right?
Yes.
We need to have it.
Definitely.
Can you give me, this whole idea of AI for some people I know is a little confusing, and how it actually would work. Can you give some use cases or some examples about really how AI can be effectively used in marketing for a company?
Yeah, definitely. So we created actually a list of like reasons to use AI that we usually share with our clients and everything. And so these are more of the backbone as to why you would want to use it. And then I'll jump into specific use cases on
Yeah,
that.
sure.
But the why is really like data analysis, automation of repetitive tasks, improved decision making,
Mm.
enhancing your customer experience, making things more cost effective, or increasing efficiency, really playing to your competitive advantage. Sometimes we recommend using it for risk mitigation or checking accuracy and consistency. And then the other thing is just that it's available for you to use 24/7. So you always have a helper in your hand, essentially, that you can rely on to even spitball, ideas, brainstorm, help me come up with something that's different and could be, apply something from a totally different industry to my industry, and how could I, you know, really put that into more of my marketing that I'm using for my own company as well. And so if we jump into some use cases around that, obviously the most basic one that everyone I think has tried at this point, but maybe not, is just writing like a cold email.
Sure.
So I know I want to introduce myself to this person, and you give the prompt to whichever AI tool you're using based on that information. One of the other things you can do with it, though, is tell it to go find information on that specific person. So, for example, look at Benny's LinkedIn profile and find something that I have in common with him, and let me talk to that point whenever we first meet, or within an initial cold email, something like that. But also, I mean, it's great at summarizing information. If you want to have just a little chat with it about, like, here's an article, tell me the highlights, and then ask questions of things that you're intrigued by. Um, Another one is just making AI write like you for LinkedIn posts and whatnot. So at least give you that starter dialogue that you can go in and edit, which I always say, always go in and edit. That's where the human touch comes in. But it can, I mean, if you give it 10 solid examples of you and your voice and your messaging and your tone, it can replicate that really well, as long as you're providing it with that context up front. It does an incredible job of really mimicking what you have already established as your personality.
So what I'm hearing you saying, Jen, is that it really, it's an accelerator. It's not a replacement of what I'm doing. It's not a replacement of me, but instead of maybe if I were to really work hard at putting something together, let's call it 10 emails that I want to put out there. Now I've actually been able to do 100 emails. And instead of maybe me being able to do it, like I'll try to do it on Monday and Friday, I can do it every day times 100, and AI is able to help me become more productive in my outreach to potentially find new clients.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. So it's an accelerator. We, as a company, don't believe in replacing people per se. I do think that there are aspects of people's jobs that will get replaced with AI, but I think it's overall going to be almost a metamorphosis of skills and what we have people focus on versus the technology. And so with that, you're really pulling in, like, let AI do what it's good at. Whatever your major differentiator is, you keep that out of AI as much as possible. So whatever your differentiator is, keep that. And then look on the periphery of what you're great at doing and find the places that you can gain efficiencies on the outsides of that. And that's where we're seeing like the best use cases of AI, and also where people aren't being replaced in that sense. They're being accelerated. They're moving a lot faster. They're being able to do more and more frequently than they could before.
This sounds really complicated, and it sounds like you have to be an expert to do this, Jen. Is this something that you suggest? Hey, listen, you need to be a professional, or is this something that somebody who is looking to just do some general marketing and maybe get a feel for that? Is this something that they can handle, or you really have to be trained on this stuff?
Yes and no on both accounts, I would say. So like there are very, very easy use cases that you can, start doing now, regardless of your level of expertise, right? So if you're wanting to create some email copy or something like that, absolutely, you're able to do that. If you start small and simple, that's what we always recommend, is like starting small and simple. Like you don't have to boil the ocean with this. Just use it for identifying like a major pain point that you have, something that takes an extraordinary amount of time that you do regularly, and start with that one thing and say, how can I get AI to replace all of the hours that I'm doing this so that I only have to do it for an hour instead of for 10 hours? And so once you've identified that pain point, you would then go in and explore what your options are, any tools, assess that feasibility, always check the security. That's one that I've also seen people look over or not take into account. So just as a background for most people, if you're using a free AI tool, it's using your data. That's the cost of doing business with it. If you are paying for the tools, you then have the ability to say, no, you cannot use my data for training. And so that's one major differentiator that I always like to call out for people who ask if it's worth the $20 a month for ChatGPT or for Gemini or any of the others. And the one thing that I will say is, with those paid subscriptions, you also get a custom GPT or a custom gem that you can build that essentially remembers what all you've trained it on. And so, and again, I think this is just jumping in and trying it out on the simplest use case possible. You don't have to be an expert on this part. But if you jump in and you just try it and say, okay, I want to create a GPT that answers emails like it's me. You feed it, here are tons of email responses that I have given over the last 2 years. And I mean, it can be 10, it can be 20, anything like that. And just say, mimicking this tone, messaging, all of those things, I want you to write automatic responses to these emails. And so that's one way that like I use it a lot. And that way I'm just going in and looking at drafts and seeing, okay, here's what I would have typed for 15 minutes. And now all I'm doing is editing it.
This is you make a really good point. And this is an opportunity for you to really, not only be able to echo your voice, do it more productively, but the efficiency gain and the things that you could actually ask AI too, Jen. I mean, you tell me, hey, I'm thinking about sending this email out. Some of the data that you're talking about from the analytics perspective, we could see now more effectively, what kind of response rate did I get with my last email campaign? What can I do to improve upon that? What can I do? What would you suggest that I do differently this time around? And oh, by the way, doing this all and keeping it in my voice. This is what we're talking about, right?
Yes. Yes, definitely. I mean, it's made some major strides in being able to digest and understand data and give you recommendations around that as well. So that's one way that we've seen Gemini has really taken off. We're a Google Suite company, and so we have the paid subscription for Gemini, which allows us to leverage those tools directly within our Google Suite, and that's been a game changer for
Yeah.
us in terms
Yeah.
of efficiency.
Yeah, I play around with all the AI services because I do this as a technology consultant. Obviously, we do this all the time, and it is crazy the amount of the progress that things make. Every time I turn around, Jen, it just seems like something new's been added. But let's talk about this for a second, because obviously there's so much that we can do, and you've given some really good examples of how we can do this and incorporate it into our business. But there needs to be some guidelines and rules when we put this in place. We just can't go carry and just do whatever we want to, especially for an absolute amateur like myself. Do you have any suggestions for people when they're doing this, when they're using AI for marketing?
Yeah. So we came up with an entire list of guidelines and principles that we use for AI, which you can look on our website and see those, but I'm going to touch on how about 5 of the top ones. Great. So the first thing I will say is establish what your AI usage policy is. So internally, make sure you're establishing when is it appropriate to use AI? When is it not? Who is allowed to use it? Which tools are you allowed to use? And what those security settings have to be on those tools as well. Then, second, be transparent about your usage. So if something is being generated from AI, and I heard this phrase the other day, actually on a different podcast. You know how you get emails from iPhones that say like, please excuse the typos, like sent from my iPhone. Are we going to start getting emails where people have at the bottom like 50% AI generated, 50% human, something like that? And I think it's funny. But the one thing I
disclosure
appreciate
statement.
the one thing I appreciate about it is how transparent it really is.
Yeah.
And so the transparency of your usage is key as well. I think another one is just be curious. So don't stop learning. This technology is changing so rapidly, and new things are coming out every single day to the point that you can't just assume that you know everything. And there will continuously be a better way of doing it. But if you start now, you're going to have more of that background, understanding, and just ease of use as soon as you've started working with it and playing with it and using it, to where you're more willing to be curious and say, oh, they have a new feature. Let me try that one out. See how other people are using it, ask other people. People are posting all over the place of like different use cases that they have and where and how they're using it, and take one of those examples and apply it to yourself. So just be curious and continuously learn as you're going. The fourth one, which I think is really the biggest thing to me, is you never, ever, ever, ever use it without human oversight. So, and like I have seen some super progressive use cases with AI where people have essentially automated an entire process, but they have friction points where they're basically reviewing a spreadsheet that the AI has fully generated for them. So they're seeing the oversight each step of the way. So like one of those use cases that I've seen was on blogs. So I know someone who has used a combination of ChatGPT, Make or Zapier, and your Google Suite, and they're going through, and each Monday it's automatically generating 5 new blog topics. The person goes in and approves yes or no. That generates it to go through and do a first draft of everything. It's then being sent to another GPT that checks it for, voice and tone and messaging, and make sure that nothing that's being said here would be contradictory to anything we believe as a company, or against our services or anything like that. And then put together the final draft with images, and then it's basically doing everything as the person reviews and approves. And so just making sure you're always setting up the structure to where someone is looking at it with the human eyes before it's going out is so important. And then finally, the last thing I would say is just check your data privacy settings on all of your tools before you're using them. Just make sure it's not necessarily bad that it's using your data to train. You just want to make sure you understand and know how it's being used, what information it's taking, and if there is something that is sensitive, that you are not including that within your tool.
Yeah. And just kind of, I'll step into my technology consultant role, since this is something that it makes that there are ways you can use, we call private LLMs, private large language models, that can be cloud-based, that are only for your access. You can actually, if you're super concerned, you could actually have local large language models that sit on your own computer. You need a fairly beefy system to be able to have one, but everything stays in-house. And for those, I know that there are probably people out there who are very concerned about data privacy and don't want to, touch that. That's a mechanism too. But I think that's a very important thing that you touch on. This is so important in terms of if I'm going to use any of the AI, and so I know there's probably some more rules and guidelines you would probably want to go into, but this isn't something, Jen, that I think that maybe can only be done. If I'm a small, let's call it a 3-person shop, none of us are marketing experts, but this is maybe I could call in the big guns like you, and maybe get some. Do you help configure people and get things set up for them, or how does that work for you?
Yes, we do. So we do a couple of different offerings, one of which is going to be like service-based. So we're your outsourced marketing team. We'll use these tools ourselves in order to give you the best delivery possible. And then additionally, we also go in and set up people's systems for them. We do AI consulting. So we'll go in and do an assessment with recommendations and show you here are the tools you're already using. This is where it would be easiest to insert those AI capabilities and where it would make the biggest difference for your company. We'll build those out, and then we'll go through and do that iteration every quarter or so as well, to say, okay, now that you've got, one thing in place for this quarter and it's up and running and working smoothly and everything, all right, let's go to the next step. What's the next thing that we need to do? And so we do both types of engagements where we're coming in and either just taking it all off of your plate or training your people on how to do it themselves with using our expertise of, here's where we think it would be most beneficial.
Yeah, that's a nice little mix there to be able to, let you handle it in the traditional sense of the word, or you can show people how to do it and, do tweaks every quarter or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Jen, this is a wonderful topic, and I think this is really interesting. The kind of a new way to look in terms of of marketing and the different models here. I think this has been wonderful. But I know there's going to be some people who will have some questions specifically they want to ask you, maybe something that's specific for their business. What's the best way for those people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, you can check out our website. It is brandmarkdigital.com. We have a page that is specifically dedicated just to AI consulting, as well as others that, are for our other services. But if you have a specific question for me, feel free to send me an email. It's Jen, Jen, at brandmarkdigital.com. And I'm happy to share anything that I've learned along the way or some use cases for you to start on and try. We also have several resources and downloadables that are available within our blogs as well. So check that out for sure.
Jen Renshaw, founder and CEO of Brandmark Digital. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Really enjoyed this talk. This is wonderful. We're going to have you back on again and kind of give us a little bit more enlightenment.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much for having me, Benny. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.